So I had come across two books recently, and one of the books this lady was talking about on BitChute, was being interviewed by a patriot. And I decided to purchase it and look into it, and I come across one word, and that basically told me all that I needed to know about the book. And that was something that I didn't even need to bother with. Because as Christians, you cannot go to these different religions thinking that you can follow them and follow Jesus too. Because Jesus said he is the way. So if he is the way, why bother going to these other things, for any kind of truth? Jesus is the truth. So we don't need to go to Buddhism to learn something or anything else. I mean, we can go and find out what they believe, but as far as getting into their practices, no, that's not what we should do as Christians. So I got into that one book and I saw that one word, and I'll just say it was what was that word? It was reincarnation. And so when you come to that word, it means that, you pass in this life and then you get born again into apparently another person, according to the belief of the person that wrote the book. And apparently according to the woman that was talking about the stuff she was talking about. And this lady said that she was a former Catholic and she's a Christian now. And I'm like, so you're a Christian and you believe that reincarnation is true? I don't believe in reincarnation. Jesus said that in Hebrews that it's appointed a man to die once and it's the judgment. Why do these people think that someone's going to be reincarnated when Jesus said that? And a lot of people would say, well, I got deja vu, that's a true sign of reincarnation. I'm like, I honestly believe that when somebody has these, they get a feeling of being there before, I believe that they've had a dream of that certain place and they saw it again. Because who knows what God can do with our spirits while we're sleeping. He can use our spirits and, minister to somebody in another place. And so when we come to a certain place, we'd be like, oh, I saw that before. So to me, that makes sense. So, and all of this is going to be pointing in a certain direction that I'm going to be getting into. So not only did I come across that book, but I come across another one. And it's called The Gospel of Q. And it was supposedly a collection of Jesus' sayings that apparently from a few apologists, whether they agreed with it or not, they said that many of the early gospel writers got their information from this source in order to build up their gospels. But to me, I know Mark was the very first gospel written. And then I believe it was Matthew, which was written, I think, around 80, 70. So we had Mark's gospel, which was the earliest. I think it was, the apologists said that it was in the 40s. And, of course, Jesus' resurrection was AD 33. So from 33 to AD 40, there's not much, there isn't really a gap there. And surely not enough gap for legends to come in and try to change, what the truth is, because people were still living at the time that witnessed Jesus' death and resurrection. And so if somebody would have came forward and with this heresy, they would have said, stop them right at their tracks. So I believe from what the apologists said that Mark was the earliest gospel written, which I think was in the late AD 40s, early 50s. And then also Paul's letters were written not long after the resurrection. And so Then we have Matthew, and then we have Luke. And apparently, from what the apologists have said, is that Mark got his gospel from Peter, and Luke got his from the Apostle Paul, and he also wrote the book of Acts, where it showed everything that, happened from, the time of the resurrection up until, Paul's imprisonment. So getting back to my original point is that, Q, the Gospel of Q, or what they would say Quell, was a collection of Jesus' sayings. Now, the point that I'm making is that when I was reading into the preface of it and into the introduction, I was getting the feeling that, the author is not so much on rules and regulations that was stated by the Apostle Paul. And, people will be like, I don't like rules. And, religious rules can be tiresome and burdensome and it can be irritating because they don't bring life to you. But as I will end up getting into, is that sometimes we need to know what is right and wrong, whether something is of the spirit and something is of the flesh. So I was just getting the feeling from, both of these books that they want the gifts of God, but they don't want God. It's like you want the benefits of something, but you don't want to deal with living a certain way. And I was just getting this feeling of independence from God while I was reading, the preface of these books. So to me, that does not settle right with me. And not only that, but with a lot of these interviews that I've seen from different patriots, is that they're all talking about things that is basically not, Christianese, they're talking about all these stuff that seems it lines up with Buddhism and Hinduism and these different words, the whatever you would call it. Let me think about a few of them. So one word is ascension and another is frequency. I'm like, okay, frequency, why not, go to God about it? Why do you need to go to a scientific way of doing something when God can bring you to where he needs to bring you? So it just seems to me like all of this is just people wanting to throw the shackles off of God and want to pursue their own way of doing things. They don't want to have to live a godly life. They just want the benefits from the godly life. That's just the impression I got. I don't know if that's really true, but that's what I was feeling when I was reading that stuff. And when I hear from these different patriots, about raising your frequency, they just want the benefits of it, but they don't want to surrender their life to Jesus and, live a godly life. I mean, they're, like I was going to say, is Paul wrote about certain things that we as Christians shouldn't do and what we should pursue. And people are like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want religious rules. But really, he's pointing to you, what is right and what is wrong in the spirit. He knows that when you pursue a certain sin, then you then have the power of sin controlling you, such as the cases of like pornography. The more you delve into it, the more it's going to take hold of you. And there's going to be a power over you until you get to that place where you withstand any kind of temptation. So that's why Paul said abstaining from certain things, because, you can get yourself wrapped up in, the clutches of the enemy. The enemy can get you bound up to where you have no freedom. So that's what Paul was talking about. And what he said that we should pursue is the ways of the Spirit. And he gave us, the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, self-control. These are what we need to pursue as Christians. And it's sort of like, you know, just helping you to know what is right and what is wrong, and helping you to know that you're on the right track when you're seeking God and you're doing what is right. If you are following sin, then you're going to be doing all these other things. You're going to be living through the flesh. And Paul gave examples of that in the book of Galatians. So it just seems to me that a lot of these patriots and different people just don't want to live, as a servant of God, but they just want to live their own way of doing things and putting off, the being a servant of God. And, they want to apparently just pursue their worldly ways of doing things, and they want the benefits that go along with it. So that is what I was just getting from this. And to me, it irritates me and it frustrates me, because, that's what appeals to man, is to be independent from God. When all God wants is for us to seek him. And he has so much, in good for us if we're willing to do so. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks for watching.